Hi everyone, Simon here from Webnestify, and welcome to the Webnestify channel, where we are exploring the hosting, self-hosting, and open source tools to make your projects more secure and efficient. Today, we are diving into the NGINX Proxy Manager and learning how to install and use it as server proxy. Plus, I will show you how to secure everything with SSL, easily and effectively. But before we start with the main content of this video, I would like to invite you to the Webnestify Discord channel. It is a really great place to chat, to request new videos, or if you have any issues with the tutorials I'm doing, you can ask there in the community and we will be able to help you and sort your issues out. And also, I run a Webnestify newsletter where usually I send emails once in 2 weeks directly to your inbox, updating you with all the great stuff I'm doing. And also we will get access to some exclusive discounts when, for example, the Webnestify Academy will be launching. Only people sign up for the newsletter will be able to get early sign-up discount for the Webnestify Academy. So now let's go back to the main video. So what is NGINX Proxy Manager, or in short, NPM? So NGINX Proxy Manager is a service that will allow you to expose your local applications to the public internet. On their website, NGINX Proxy Manager, you can read more. And when you check their GitHub page, you can also read everything what you want to read. But I don't have any dedicated video for this NGINX Proxy Manager. So that's why I'm going to create it, because we will be using it from now on and to all other future videos. So we don't need to always deploy this. So you can always go back and check how you can install it, etc., etc. All right, so yeah, we're going to be using Docker, and also we will use a Cloudflare API because we want to have a DNS challenge SSL from Let's Encrypt. So when you visit my repo on GitHub, you can see that I already have NGINX Proxy Manager there. So when you open it, you can read more about the features, etc., etc. But what you need to take care of is the Docker Compose. As you can see, here is the new Docker Compose file. And here are some variables that you can keep. And also you have some comments that if you want to change something or you don't need to change. Labels, I add label if you want to keep this container up and running. You can set automatic backups with Watchtower. You can also find the installation or the Docker Compose on my GitHub repo. And for your networks, you will need to also change this value. Security options, no new privilege. True, that means that this container cannot get extra privileges that it needs to be functioning. So this is for security purposes. Also, PUID, PGID is gonna be your local user that have Docker privileges. And again, you will need to specify your network, which we will create in this tutorial. It's simple, is only one line of command. All right, so now let's quickly deploy our server and install NGINX Proxy Manager. So to install it, just go to your cloud provider. I highly recommend using Hetzner because it is very cheap and you have premium features for free. So when you want to create a server, and you can specify which location. Let's keep it here in Falkenstein. And also you want to choose Debian 12. And you can use completely even ARM architecture if you want. So let's deploy 4 vCPUs, 8 gigs of RAM on ARM. Networking, if you want to use public IPv6, which there is no need, so I don't use it. but you want to create a private network. So let's create a network, and it's gonna be npm. Let's do subnet 24. And this is really great because if you are going to add more servers in this project in Hetzner, you don't need to specify public IP. You can only use the local IP, which you will also add to additional servers. And this is really great also from the security standpoint, because on other servers you don't need to open any firewalls because it will be communicating through this private IP address range. So now we have this, and let me get my cloud init configuration file. So I have my cloud init, and what we can do is we can paste the cloud init file here. That will take care of the basic server setup, and you can enable backups, and now we can create and buy. And also npm. You need to name the server, so you can create and buy. And after this is done, what we need to go is we need to go to the firewalls, and we need to open following ports. So port 22, which is SSH port. I highly recommend that you add your own dedicated IP address so nobody else can get access via SSH. Or if you have some mesh network like Netbird, Telscale, you can use it, and you don't need to open port 22 at all. But in my case, let me add my dedicated IP. Once you have a dedicated IP, you don't need to open ICMP port for ping probing. Now we want to add additional rule, which will be HTTP. Then will be HTTPS. And then will be quick protocol if you want to use it. And also npm management port. So for HTTP, you can allow only IPv4, port 80, the same for HTTPS, port 443. For quick, it will be protocol UDP and port 443. And for NGINX port, which is administrative port, because you will need to access the npm before you can put it on the domain. So let me copy my dedicated IP address, and port will be 81. As you can see, here is the port 81, which will be the management port, and you can always change it if you want. And yeah, and we can name it npm, and we can apply it to our server, and we can create our firewall. All right, so now what we want to do is you want to SSH into the server. You can copy the command. Let me open a new terminal, and we can just SSH Webnestify at the server IP. You want to accept the fingerprint, and now it will ask you to change the password, and now you enter your new user password. All right, now we can SSH back, and as you can see, we have already our local user, which we will need. It is, let's now elevate ourselves to the root. And when you go cut etc password file, you see we have our UID and PUID 1000, which is by default when you add a first local user. Any additional users will have 1001, 1002, etc. So let me clear this, and now we will install our Docker. So to install Docker, you can grab the installation script from the documentation that I will provide. You can just paste it, and now it will automatically install the Docker and Docker Compose. And once this is installed, we will need to add our user to the Docker group. And also after it, we will create our network. So Docker is installed. Now we need to add our user to Docker group. So user mode AG Docker Webnestify. And now we can switch back to our local user. And now we will create our network. So it's a simple command, docker network create testing. And when you check the networks, docker network ls, we have our testing network. And I think now we will also need to install our Git. So sudo apt install Git. And now what we need to clone is our Docker repository. So it's gonna be git clone https github.com, I think, and it's gonna be Webnestify docker.git. And as you can see, now we have our Docker folder. Now we navigate to the Docker folder and to the NGINX Proxy Manager. And now we're gonna need to edit our Docker Compose. So gonna be nano docker compose.yaml. You can leave those variables here because it will create the folder for the data, which is using SQLite database. If you are more advanced and you're gonna have hundreds of hosts, you can set up also MariaDB for NGINX Proxy Manager. Disable IPv true. And your network, we will change it to the test that we just created. And also we will change it here, test. Control O, enter and exit. And now we can do docker compose upd and docker compose logs -f, because we wanna see the logs if everything is running okay. And we have this error that the test declared as external but could not be found. And that's because we didn't create network called test, but testing. So it's gonna be nano docker compose, and we will just change the network testing and also here. And now we can redeploy it again. And as you can see, now it's checking path, checking the ownership, and we should have our instance up and running in seconds. And as you can see, we have everything ready. So now let's visit our administrative dashboard. So you want to copy the server IP and you're gonna do port 81. You continue to the site and you will be presented by the welcome screen. And email address by default is admin@example.com and password is change.me. And when you log in, you will need to change your username and also the password. So it's gonna be Simon. Gonna be testing at webnestify.cloud. We can click save. And now we will need to add our current password, which is change.me. And you want to add your new password. Yeah. And make sure for the production environment, the password is really strong. We can click save. And here is the NGINX Proxy Manager. So what we now going to do is to create our SSL certificate. So you can click add an SSL certificate. For the domain names, you want to also set up the wildcard. There's gonna be start.cloudflare toots.info. And also you will need to add the root domain. So it will be cloudflaretools.info. And we want to use DNS challenge. And here you get access to many DNS provider that you can add. But for this demonstration, I'm using Cloudflare all the time. So we will specify our Cloudflare API token. So when you go to your Cloudflare account, you go to get your API token. And we will create our secure token to communicate with our instance. So let's create one. We can start with the token templates. So we can use edit zone DNS. That we want to also name this npm tutorial. And I like to also add zone, and read. Next, I highly recommend to set client IP address filtering. That means only your server with the specific IP can communicate with this API token. You know that I love the most secure thing that you can do. So this is why I like to add my IP address, which is in, and we will copy the server IP, and only the server IP will be able to generate the SSL. And you can define how long this token will stay active. We can continue to the summary. Oh, okay, yeah. For the zone resources, if you want to include all zones from your account, which you probably do, you can do all zones from your account. Or if you have a customer also invited you to your Cloudflare account, you can include all zones. And we can continue to summary, and we will create our token. Next step is to copy this API token, go back to npm, and you can paste the token here. You agree to the Let's Encrypt terms of service, and you can click just save, and now it will generate the SSL. And as you can see, we have our wildcard SSL, which will encrypt completely everything. So next up, you can change the default site if you want. You can edit it, and you can add custom HTML page if you want. You can see the audit log. You can add also more users if you want. And you can also set up the access list, so you can name it. You can add plain HTTP authorization, or you can only allow specific IP address to enter your proxied websites. And yeah, so let's go back to our proxy host. And now we will need to create our proxy record. But first, you want to copy this server IP address, go back to Cloudflare, and we will need to add our DNS records. So what we want to do is, we already have this. Let me cancel it. You can actually remove those because we don't need them. Let me delete all records. And we will add our main, which will be target root, and IPv address is this one. You can click save. You can keep the status proxy on. And then also you want to add the wildcard, and will be this domain, this IP address of this server. Then you have also option to create a wildcard of the wildcard. That means that if you want to add, for example, something that's something, and at the server IP, you cannot use proxy because the Cloudflare free or the advanced SSL does not support the second level of the subdomain. So you can either disable the proxy, or you will need to purchase advanced SSL from Cloudflare, which I think is it is a 10 bucks. So we don't need this. And let me show you the advanced SSL. I think it's gonna be on the edge. Opa. Come on, Cloudflare. And when we go to the SSL in the Edge certificates, here you can order the advanced SSL, and as you can see, you can use basically everything. We don't need this. And also you want to set up one page rule that will disable the caching on everything on the domain and subdomain. So we will create a URL, and it's gonna be HTTPS asterisk. We paste this and we select cache level to bypass, save, and deploy the page rule. Perfect. And now what we want to do, we want to create our NGINX Proxy Manager to be through the SSL. So we will add our proxy host. We will specify npm.cloudflare.toots.info. You press enter. SSL, you select the SSL you created. You can force everything. And for the details, scheme will be HTTPS. And forward name IP, you can either choose localhost, or when you go to your server, when you list the Docker PS, you can specify it by the container name, which is npm-npm-1. And we can paste it there. And we can block common exploits. And now we can click save. And as you can see, the status is online. And if we are lucky, now we can enter our NGINX Proxy Manager on HTTPS. And as you can see, we have too many redirects because the Cloudflare did not create it SSL for us, yes, for now. Let me see. Let me try the localhost, but I think this is because the Cloudflare SSL. Yeah. So when you got this error, what you want to do is you can disable the SSL. Where is it? You can disable it, and then the SSL certificate from Cloudflare are gone. And now we just enable it again, so it will create a fresh certificates. This usually happens not very often. I see it like first time, but I already know that this is the solution, and it will generate fresh sets of certificates. All right, so we should be up and running. And also, last thing, what you need to do is when you go to SSL TLS, you go to the Edge certificates, and you want to choose always use HTTPS. And also you want to choose minimum TLS 1.2. And in the overview, for the SSL TLS encryption, you want to choose custom, and you also need to set up the strict. So we can click save. And if there are any luck, we can visit our page, and yes. So let me zoom in. I'm gonna log in testing at webnestify.cloud. And now we have our NGINX Proxy Manager on wildcard SSL. Perfect. And now there is one more step. Once you put this on a domain, you want to also set in the Docker Compose that you don't want to expose this container to the public on port 81. So we will need to add our local IP address. So let's go back here into the Docker. Let me clear this, and we will edit our Docker Compose file, which is nano Docker Compose, and right next to the port 81, I'm gonna add a double dot and 127.0.0.1. Gonna save it, and now we will stop our Docker Compose. Docker Compose stop. And we will run it again. So Docker Compose up -d and Docker Compose logs f, and should be automatically accepting the changes in our Docker Compose. So let me see what it says. Okay, that's fine. And now what we can do, we can try to refresh this page to see if we can access it. And nope, we cannot access it because we blocked public access to port 81 because we specify only generic localhost IP address. But when we go to SSL, we can still access it on our SSL. So yeah, this is basically it. And yeah, it's pretty easy and straightforward. And I like to use NGINX Proxy Manager because it's seriously easy to use. You have nice graphical user interface. But I also like to use Traffic, which is for more advanced out there. And maybe I will do tutorial on my channel about Traffic, but there are a lot of labels and a lot of manual things that you will need to configure. So that's why I like to showcase NGINX. Another option is also Caddy, which is very simple, but you don't have graphical user interface, which many of you like to use graphical user interface. So yeah, that's it for this tutorial and how you can use and install NGINX Proxy Manager. So thank you very much for watching, and if you have any questions or issues, feel free to join the Webnestify Discord server, where you can chat and ask me anything. And also, if you like my Docker repo, feel free to star it. It helps. And also, you can find many applications that I will be adding and creating tutorials on Webnestify channel. And see you later.